Alan Clayton Matthews, Professor of Public Policy and Urban Affairs at Northeastern University.
And I'm Barry Bluestone. I'm Dean of the School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs at Northeastern and Director of our Dukakis Center for Urban and Regional Policy.
And this morning we're talking about the state of the U.S. economy and the state's economy.
And we'll also be taking a look at the housing market and demography as destiny.
The nation's weak economy is largely due to the large amount of wealth that was lost by households in this recession in terms of falling house prices and falling stock prices, which cut their retirement portfolios, and that has resulted in very slow economic growth. Economic growth in Massachusetts has far outstripped that of the nation as a whole. In the first quarter of this year, our state economy grew at a 6% annualized rate versus a 3.7% for the U.S. And in the second quarter, a 4.7% rate of growth versus only 1.7% for the United States. And we see a difference also in job growth. Jobs in Massachusetts have grown by about 40,000 from the job trough in December of 2007. So the state's economy has been performing much better than the nation's recently. However, the state's economy is now beginning to slow. Massachusetts exports nearly 50% of its goods and services to other states and other countries. So if the national economy is growing slowly and the European economy is weak and the Asian economy is slowing, that means that growth here will slow, and we're beginning to see the beginnings of that here.
Indeed, while the Massachusetts economy is slowing, this is very different than in the last two recessions we had before this one. In the 1990s recession, in the early 2000 recession, Massachusetts trailed the rest of the country rather dramatically. This time, Massachusetts is leading the country. Indeed, we have about 2.4% of the total workforce in America, but about 5% of the growth in jobs since January of this year has occurred in the Commonwealth. So that's good news. We can also take a look at the housing markets. The housing market is critical to the overall economy. Our housing prices here in Greater Boston peaked in November of 2005, 5 years ago. They fell about 15% between then and March or April of last year, 2009, when they began to recover. And they've been growing slowly. They've been about stable over the last 2 or 3 months with the end of the first-time home buyer tax credit. But I want to conclude by also taking a look at what I think may be even more important than what's happening in the economics numbers or happening in the housing numbers, and that is what's happening to Massachusetts demography. And the fact is that we're growing old very, very quickly, more quickly than the rest of the country. Between now and 2020, a decade from now, the Census Bureau projects that we'll have about 244,000 more households on top of the 3.1 million we have today. But of those 244,000 more households, 300,000 will be headed by somebody over 55, and we'll have 76,000 fewer households of people 55 and younger. Problem with that is who's going to work? Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to give us the tax revenue we need? We need to attract young people. We have to keep them here. We have to attract them from other states. Our universities and colleges do a magnificent job of bringing young people here. But we have to keep them after they graduate, at least a lot more than we have in the past. So we have the chance of getting the demography right. We have the chance of getting the economics right. We have the chance of getting the housing market right. The next few years will tell, can we sustain this recovery of the Massachusetts economy so that we can have a prosperous future more equitably shared?